Malachi Kern was mending the top wire of his own north fence when he heard the three riders come up the trail on the far side of the ridge, and he set the pliers down because he knew before he saw them what they were and where they were going. Three of Bart Hollins's men. Bart Hollins ran the big Kettle Creek outfit down the valley, and Bart Hollins had been trying for 6 months to talk the widow Hattie Vance out of her homestead's water rights so that Hollins could run his herd across her spring in the dry months. Hattie Vance had said no in April. She had said no in May. She had said no in June. Hollins had, since July, been sending 3 of his hardest hands up the trail to Hattie's fence, about once a week, to say the word no was liable to become a difficult word to hold on to. Malachi Kern had watched it 2 weeks now. He whistled once. His mare came. He mounted. He took the Winchester out of the saddle scabbard. He rode the ridge trail toward Hattie's fence. He came over the last rise at a walk, not a gallop, because a man who came at a gallop was liable to be shot at by nervous men. The 3 hands were at Hattie's fence. Hattie Vance was on the inside of the fence, in a plain calico dress and a straw sun hat, holding her father's old Winchester across her forearm. She was 34, straight-shouldered, brown-haired. Her jaw was set. She was not smiling. The 3 hands were Cully Rhyme, who was the ranch's second foreman and a hard drinker, and 2 Hollins day riders, both younger and less careful. Cully was leaning on his saddle horn. He was speaking to Hattie in the reasonable low voice a hard man uses to a woman he means to break. Malachi Kern rode up 10 yards away and stopped. He did not raise the Winchester. He held it across the pommel of his saddle. He said mildly, "Cully." Cully Rhyme looked over his shoulder. "Kern, this is not your fence." Malachi said, "It is my neighbor's fence. My neighbor asked me 2 weeks ago to keep an eye on it. I have been keeping an eye. I have been counting your visits. Today is the 7th in 6 weeks. Today is the last. Ride out, Cully." Cully said, "Or what?" Malachi said, "Or I file an affidavit at the county seat under Section 14 of the 82 Revised Code. It is the section about repeated intimidation of a homesteader by hired agents of a rival water claim. It is a section that pays fines to the county and pays damages to the homesteader. It also pays, at the county judge's discretion, prison time to the hired agents. The judge is Callis. Callis foreclosed on Hollins's uncle in 78. Callis will read that affidavit and rule against you at 3 o'clock. That is what." Cully said, "You are bluffing." Malachi said, "You are welcome to test me. Mrs. Vance is my witness. So is the Wallace boy who came up here yesterday and heard your second-to-last speech through the sage. So is Ida Peel, who ran her wagon past the fence last Wednesday and saw the 5th. So is Colonel Bright, who saw you on the North Road last Thursday and put it in his diary, because he is a man who puts things in his diary. I have 4 witnesses. Ride out, Cully." Cully Rhyme looked at the Winchester across Malachi's pommel. He looked at Hattie's Winchester across her forearm. He looked at his 2 riders. He said, "This is not over, Kern." Malachi said, "This is over, Cully. Ride." They rode. Malachi did not lower the Winchester until they were half a mile down the trail. Then he swung down. He walked to the fence. He tied his mare to the top rail. Hattie said, "Mr. Kern." He said, "Mrs. Vance." She said, "Malachi, if we are going to keep meeting at fences." He said, "Hattie." She said, "Was that all true? The section number, the witnesses, Judge Callis, all of it?" He said, "Every word." She said, "How did you learn Section 14? He said, "I read the revised code the winter after Clara died. I did not know at the time why. I have known this month why." Hattie Vance said, "Malachi Kern, sit on my porch. I have coffee." Over coffee, she told him the plain shape of Hollins's pressure. Over a second cup, he told her plainly that he had organized the 5 other small homesteaders on the north branch of the valley the previous Sunday at his own kitchen table into a mutual defense association with a shared attorney at the county seat, and that he had been meaning to ride down to her fence and ask her to be the 6th member for a week. He said he had not ridden down sooner because he had not wanted her to think he was riding down to court her. She said she did not, at this stage, mind if he was. He looked at his coffee cup. She said, "Malachi, please look up." He looked up. She said, "Ride down again next Sunday. Bring the papers for the association, and a plate of your Aunt Ada's ginger cookies. I will be here." He said, "Yes, Hattie." He rode down every Sunday of the fall. By the third Sunday, he was staying to supper. By the fifth Sunday, the Mutual Defense Association had filed a formal water rights petition with the county land office that named all 6 homesteaders and Judge Callis, and cited Section 14 of the 82 Code, and named Bart Hollins as a party to a pattern of intimidation. The petition was heard on the second Thursday of November. Judge Callis ruled from the bench in the homesteaders' favor. Hollins was ordered to keep his hired hands off the North Branch fence line and to pay court costs of $200, and to publish an apology to Hattie Vance and the other 5 homesteaders in the Denver paper. Hollins published a mumbling one. It was not enough for Callis. Callis added $20. Cully Rhyme was fined $50. He left the country in December. Malachi came to Hattie's porch on the first Sunday of December, in his one good coat, with a folded paper in his pocket. He said, "Hattie." She said, "Malachi." He said, "I did not come today with association papers." She said, "I noticed." He said, "I came with a plainer paper. I have thought a great deal since the fence in August. I would like to marry you. I have thought about it every Sunday since the second one. I would like to say it plainly now. I would like you to know." Hattie Vance looked at Malachi Kern. She said, "Malachi, yes, I have been thinking too. I would like that also." He said, "Then we will." The circuit preacher married Malachi Kern and Hattie Vance in the front room of the Vance homestead on the last Sunday of January. Judge Callis rode out from town to give the bride away, because Hattie had no living kin nearby, and Callis had, he said, taken a personal interest. The other 5 members of the Mutual Defense Association came with their wives and brought casseroles. Afterward, Malachi walked with Hattie out to the fence where the 3 Hollins men had cornered her in August. He put his rifle down on the top rail. She put hers down beside his. They looked at the fence a moment. She said, "Malachi." He said, "Hattie." She said, "This fence." He said, "This fence." She said, "In August, I stood on this side of it, and I thought, I am going to lose my water and my homestead, and I am going to have to walk to my sister's in St. Louis with what I can carry. And Reuben would have hated it. Then you came over the rise. You rode at a walk and not a gallop. I have thought about that walk not gallop every night since. That was the moment I knew this was going to hold." Malachi said, "The walk was on purpose." Hattie said, "I know." 2 years on a warm September evening, Hattie Kern sat on the porch of the joined Vance Kern homestead with Malachi beside her and their small daughter Ruth, 10 months old, asleep against her chest. The 2 homesteads had been surveyed together and re-registered under joint tenancy the June after their marriage. The Mutual Defense Association had grown to 9 homesteaders and had filed 2 more petitions since November of the first year and had won both. Bart Hollins had, quietly, in the spring, sold his Kettle Creek outfit at a loss and moved to Nebraska. His replacement, a plainer man from Cheyenne called Waite, had come to Malachi's plank table in April and had asked, in a courteous voice, whether the association would consider allowing his herd a limited crossing at Hattie's Spring in the dry months, in exchange for a fair cash payment and a proper contract. Malachi had said yes. Hattie had said yes. The contract had been signed. Judge Callis had written into the margins of the contract in his own hand, "Well done, all sides." Malachi said, "Hattie." She said, "Malachi." He said, "The Waite contract came in the mail today. Signed, countersigned, filed." Hattie said, "Good." She kissed his rough cheek. Ruth stirred and did not wake. The pasture went to gold under the September sun. The north spring ran clear and cold. Somewhere in the yard, a small tune was drifting from Ada, Malachi's aunt, 71, who had moved down from Denver in April to keep house with Hattie, playing a plain hymn on the little parlor organ. And Hattie Vance Kern, who had stood at her own fence in August with her father's old Winchester across her forearm because 3 of Bart Hollins's men had cornered her and had heard the ridge trail rise with a rider she did not, in the first 2 seconds, know was her rescue, put her cheek against her husband's cheek, and understood that the good slow country had, in its good slow way, sent her a neighbor who read the revised code in the winter after his wife died, and had let her know that a plain, honest man will read a plain, honest code, and, on the strength of what he reads, will ride a walk-not gallop to a widow's fence at 4 in the afternoon. And so he had.